So welcome everyone. My name is Tiesa. I'm a senior CS major and I'm co-outreach chair for GDSC.
Hello, I'm Sue. I'm a first year with an intending major data science and I'm co-tech lead for GDSC.
Thank you all for attending GDSC's cross-registration panel tonight. And thank you to our three panelists, Funing, Zahra, and Annika for joining us. Sue and I will be moderating this event by asking our panelists general questions about the cross-registration process, coursework balance, and personal experiences with cross-registering at MIT and Olin College. We'll also be asking about other opportunities they've engaged in, such as UROPs at MIT and the Olin Engineering Certification Program. And we asked our attendees to just drop any questions in the chat or use the hand raising feature throughout the event as you wish. Although we might not get to everyone's questions right away, we will also set aside time at the end. So anyone can ask additional questions that were addressed earlier on. And lastly, as a reminder, we are recording this session for those who aren't able to attend tonight. Just a reminder that video is not recorded. When we record, it's just an audio, but feel free to just keep your cameras off if you don't feel comfortable. And yeah, let's get started.
To start, panelists, please introduce yourself with your name and pronouns, class year, major, and where you have cross-registered, and if you have participated in research or other opportunities.
I can go first. So my name is Zahra. I use she, they pronouns. I'm a class of 2022. I am an econ math double major. I took Institutions of Modern Capitalism, States and Markets as a sophomore, and that was a graduate seminar in the Department of Urban Studies Planning. And then last spring, when I was a junior, I took Intro to Machine Learning, which is in the computer science department. And then I've also UROPed in the media lab, history department, comparative media studies department, and Sloan. I've hopped around a lot. It's not like a thing that you need to do to have a good experience, but it's just what I did. Yeah, and I'm going to be a pre-doctoral research assistant after I graduate at Stanford for an economist there for 2 years, and then I'm applying to econ PhD programs.
I can go next. So hi everyone, my name is Funing. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm class of 2022, like Zahra, and I major in computer science and English. And similar to Zahra, I also cross-register at MIT, and I also have a few different UROP experiences, so feel free to ask me any questions about that. Because I'm a CS major, so I took most of the classes that I've taken there are in the computer science department, or course 6, as they call it. So yeah, really nice to meet all of you.
I'm Annika. I use she, her pronouns. I'm class of 2023. I'm a neuroscience major and I'm cross-registered at Olin. I'm also doing a small research project with an Olin professor this semester, kind of focusing on surface EMG and neurotechnology. Yeah.
So our first question would be, what led you to cross-register at your institution?
Should we do the same order or? Yeah, okay. So initially, I kind of just wanted to get off campus when I was a sophomore, because it was just, I'm from a city and Wellesley's really not a city. So I really like the opportunity of being able to engage in really interesting classes, and then also have spaces in Boston that were kind of neutral spaces for me, and I could just go and I could work. This was pre-COVID. So sometimes I just went to MIT over the weekend and worked in the libraries there, and that was really nice because I got off campus. So yeah, that's why I initially cross-registered.
Yeah, I definitely second the getting off campus idea. And I think like what led me to cross-register because mostly because that like Wellesley doesn't offer a lot of the courses or the concentrations that I'm really interested in going into. So I recently, or maybe a few years ago, a couple of years ago, I got into like machine learning and NLP or natural language processing. And like Wellesley doesn't have like such a huge focus on those kind of areas. But while MIT, like, you know, they have a very big laboratory that's focused on artificial intelligence, the C cell. And they also have a lot of researchers focused on this area and a lot of advanced courses. So like I just thought that it might be a really good opportunity to take additional classes there. And it really helped with preparing for my thesis work this year. Like based on what I've done with the MIT labs there and also the classes that I've taken. So I think that if you cannot find like say like advanced classes at Wellesley that can fit your needs, then maybe MIT is like a very good place for you to look for. And maybe like talking to your professors and like a lot of them might also have experiences or insights about what you can do and like what additional classes that you can take. So yeah, I think mostly it's for augmenting my Wellesley College education.
Yeah, similarly to what Funing was saying, Wellesley doesn't have a really big engineering department and you can't major in engineering. So I came into college really interested in learning more about kind of engineering and following that pathway a little bit. So I started with Engineering 160 at Wellesley with Amy Banzer and then decided I wanted to take more engineering classes. And so Olin seemed like a good next step just because it's so close and they have the certificate program.
Yeah, so would you guys like to explain what the overall process and the timeline is for the students who are interested right now in cross-registering for the first time?
I feel like Funing has taken a lot more classes than me at MIT. So I don't know if you want to talk about your process, and I could say if it matches mine.
Yeah, sure, definitely. I think for MIT, it's a rather complicated process to begin with, like especially when doing this for the first time. I did this before, way before COVID times. I mean, before COVID time happened, so it might be a little bit different because some of the procedures you can just do it online. But basically, I think the overall procedure is that you first need to look into their course catalog to kind of decide like what are the classes that you're interested in. And like you will find the professors who are teaching that class, like the email address and their names. And then you have to ask for permissions to see like whether you have the right backgrounds for the class and whether like they have enough space. So like this usually doesn't happen in like STEM departments like course 6, but I do know like for other departments like course 21, which is like history, humanities, social sciences, like the classes often filled out really fast because like they are pretty popular with MIT students and the sizes are relatively smaller. So like asking like whether there are space is really important to like first check that out. And usually I think that you cannot sign up for a class before the first day of classes or like the first week. I'm not sure if that's changed, maybe like not that much, but I think that feel free to maybe email the professors beforehand. Maybe like that will help you to plan out like your entire schedule because it is like a pretty challenging process to work around the MIT classes or with your Wellesley ones. And then like after you done those things, like the rest of the things are like more logistical, like you have to fill out the cross-registration form, which is linked on the website. If you search for like MIT Wellesley College like on Google, then like you will see like a very comprehensive page to see like how you can register. And then like you fill out the form and then have the professor who granted you the permission to sign it. and you have to send the signed form to the register at both Wellesley at MIT. So you have to send it to 2 places. And like a lot of people maybe like they're confused and then they only send it to 1 place, and then it's not going to work out if you only send it to 1 place, not the other one. And I think after that, you have to, if you're doing this for the first time, then you have to get a MIT account. And then you can go to their website. It has a very comprehensive instructions. And I think the registrar people would also instruct you to do that. And I think like you should also go to their Atlas Center to get an ID card, like a physical ID card, so you can access campus. And especially this year, like we have a lot of like complicated COVID policies that you have to do testings to get to campus, get into the buildings. So like it's really important to get that ID card like activated in time. And then you have to comply with their COVID testing policies. So I think, yeah, it is a pretty long process. But like luckily a lot of the steps are like the one-time things that you need to do. So yeah, I think that's kind of the basic idea. And not sure if Zahra, you want to add on to what I've just said, or yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a couple things. Oh gosh, now I'm blanking. Right, so I saw a question in the chat about like when to reach out to professors. I think it depends. I mean, like I've been fine just reaching out during the winter session, but I know some people might want to have like more of a plan beforehand. So yeah, because you're not going to be able to register for the class until the first day of spring semester. So yes. And then also just like the Atlas Center, which Funing referenced, is just like their IT building, and you just go there and they like take a photo and they give you an ID. And I believe that the COVID testing policy means that like I'm not currently cross-registered, but my best friend is, and she gets tested twice a week here, and then she gets tested twice a week at MIT. And like, because it doesn't really communicate. And yeah, and your MIT ID card also has a Charlie card in it, which is nice. That's just like a way to take the T or the buses in Boston. Yeah.
And so cross-registering at Olin, I think Babson also works this way. You'll be able to cross-register after Wellesley registration and Olin registration have finished. So like right now, both colleges have finished their registration. So you fill out a Google form, I think from the dean's page or the registrar's page, like their website at Wellesley. And so you'll fill it out with all of the class information, which you can access through Olin's just basic academic page. And then you'll hear back from the Olin registrar, and you'll usually get a confirmation for registering in whatever course you wanted. Before you choose courses, you can reach out to professors. Olin has a lot of prereqs that can be a little bit confusing, but I've had really good experience reaching out to professors and just kind of saying, here's where I'm coming from with like math and physics and such. And they're usually willing to work with you and kind of let you catch up to the class if you're not quite there yet and things like that. Yeah.
Great. And Annika, since I know that you're part of like that Olin certification program, could you just tell us more about that? Like, how did you find out about it? And is it, are all Wellesley students eligible, or what other general requirements are there?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Certificate of Engineering program is basically a minor in engineering. I was particularly drawn to it because you can do it during your 4 years at Wellesley, so you don't have to go for the full 4+1 program, which you can do at Olin and MIT. Yeah, and so all Wellesley students are eligible. It's a 5-course program. One of the courses is kind of a required, there are 3 or 4 that you can choose from. One of them is actually Engineering 160 at Wellesley. And then the other 3 courses are kind of concentration courses, and then you get 1 elective. And so you kind of have a general overall focus. Like, for example, my focus is like bioengineering loosely, but there's really a lot of flexibility with kind of where you can take it and what you want to like learn about during your engineering certificate. Yeah.
And how did you first find out about it? Was it through like one of your professors, or you just like happened to like browse through the website and like just discover it on your own?
Yeah, so I think I learned about it through Amy Banzer, but I know that Dean Black at Wellesley used to be on Olin faculty, and so she was really helpful in kind of helping me figure out which program would be a good fit for me, and letting me talk to Wellesley students who had gone through it before. Yeah.
Great, thank you. And for all of our panelists, like, could you just share like how the coursework balances between taking Wellesley classes and classes at either MIT or Olin, and how should it be planned in terms like scheduling? Do you have any advice, including just like taking consideration of time for like classes and commute?
So I can go first. I think the class, like the workload varies a lot, just as it does at Wellesley between classes. If you go to Firehose, if you look up Firehose Guide MIT, there's a website that people at MIT have put together that like has like average amount of hours that you spend on the class per week and like how people like it. And once you actually have an MIT ID, you can access course evaluations, which is like numeric evaluations of the courses in the past semesters, which can also be helpful. For me, when it was in person, or also when I was UROPing, I saved a lot of time by like forcing myself to work on the bus, because it's really easy to not work on the bus and just like stare out into nowhere. But fortunately, I don't get car sick, so I can just like, hunker down and then just work, and then I have 2 hours of work. So it doesn't really feel like I'm losing time. And I don't have the link on me right now at the end, or yeah, if someone else can like link to that, that would be good. And yeah, so yeah, I would just like, same considerations as like if you're taking a class at Wellesley, don't overload with like too many hard classes, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really great advice, Zara. And I think to add on to that, I kind of I'm in a different situation as Zara. Like I get car sick a lot, so unfortunately I cannot work at all on the bus, which means that like if I'm doing like a CS class that requires maybe like 3 to 5 meetings every week, then I'll be losing quite a lot of time on the bus. So I feel like you definitely want to consider that situation, and like you want to take that into account about like how many hours you're about to lose. Like even though you might be able to work on a bus, like there might be other times, like there might be times throughout the semester where you just feel really stressed and you just couldn't be productive at all. So like always like plan more time on those things than you actually estimate. Like that's like one piece of advice. And then I think another piece of advice or like learning from experience is like, especially for pretty challenging technical STEM classes, you might also want to take into account of the office hours times, because like in COVID times, this actually isn't such a huge deal because everything is online. But like a lot of the times like now, I think that most of the classes are back to the in-person mode. So that means that like most of the office hours are also in person, and they might or might not be on the same day that you're going to MIT for your like lectures or recitations. So like you might also want to like take into that account. So like I remember when I was taking algorithms, I do I did utilize office hours quite a lot because the class has a lot of pretty challenging P-sets. But like also I think another idea about potentially saving that time is by finding other Wellesley students who are taking the class. You can form study groups. I find that really helpful when I was taking a lot of the CS classes because they're pretty popular among Wellesley students. And you can just ask around in the Facebook Wellesley CS. I know a lot of people like to do that, and I kind of found some study buddies through that. So that's like a good thing. And then otherwise, I think it's also useful, like, although maybe you have your top choice, like, it's also useful to write down maybe a couple of other options. Like, even though we can only pick like one class per semester, or maybe you can petition for two. Because I think that sometimes maybe like you sign up for a class and then you realize that like maybe your background doesn't fit that well with the class, or you're actually not that interested in the material. So like having that backup option might like make it more flexible for you to like plan out like if you have like other options when you are doing that like shopping period. So yeah, I think these are some things that I learned from experiences. Yeah.
Yeah. Going back to coursework briefly, so I think Olin's kind of workload is a little bit different from what we typically have at Wellesley. Like they won't have midterms, but it's kind of like they'll have big projects where you would normally have exams or midterms. And so I found kind of instead of like studying every day, I'll often try to go to Olin and put in like a solid block of time to just work on a project with my partners. So kind of working around that a little bit can be challenging, but also kind of nice in that it's kind of changing up like how much I study every day and stuff. I would recommend taking Olin classes with a reasonable gap of time around them, although the shuttle does run every half hour, especially in the afternoons. It can get a little bit off schedule. And while professors are totally understanding, if you want to be on time, it can be a little bit stressful. Yeah, but with office hours and such, professors have been really flexible, especially with everyone having Zoom now. A lot of professors will kind of let you hop on Zoom, even if they're holding in-person office hours, if you're like stuck on campus or something, which has been super nice. Yeah.
Great, thank you. And I received an anonymous question. So this person says, I've heard that a student has temporarily dropped out of Wellesley to do a full-time semester at MIT before. Is this actually possible? I have not heard of a case, but I don't know if like Funing or Zahra, if you've experienced that or like heard of anyone doing that before.
I think that before COVID happened, a couple of my friends did like a full semester workload at MIT and they just lived off campus and then they didn't register for any Wellesley classes in that semester. And I think that before COVID, it seems that it's possible for one semester, like for each Wellesley student to do that for one semester. But I think that the class deans are usually very not happy about that. And like I think that especially after COVID, when we have this like one credit bearing course per semester policy, I feel like the like admin side might be even more strict about this. So like if like you are like interested in doing that, like I would definitely recommend to talk to the class dean first and to see like whether like on the admin side of things it's possible to do that, because I think the trend is like getting stricter and stricter.
Yeah, and because there is like a new rule on like one credit bearing course per semester, it's like probably different from, I don't know who did that, but like probably different from like when they did that. But again, just like talk to your dean if you have like special circumstances.
Oh God. All right, so we'll be moving on to talk about valuable experiences and resources. So panelists, what are other valuable opportunities that you got from taking the classes, or like that led you to take those classes? This can be anything from like the direct research opportunities you had, or like faculty mentorship, or learning and or like getting a view into a new field, or like helping you decide your major. What are some of your thoughts?
I mean, I don't know. I feel really bad saying this, but like the seminar that I took at MIT was probably like my favorite class I've taken. Like in my time at Wellesley, and I'm now a senior, and that still holds. And that really helped me shape like my thinking about the world and like what I want to do. And then like I don't know, the other class that I took at MIT, the intro to machine learning, was also like one of the more like challenging and rewarding classes that I've taken. So I think just like there are classes that you can take that I've taken that have been really, really rewarding in my like academic / intellectual life. Yeah, I would say those are the benefits.
Yeah, I think kind of in a similar way, like because I wasn't able to like have those kind of like offerings at Wellesley. So like I think from my MIT classes it actually opened up a lot of like new opportunities and like new areas that like I wanted to dive deeper into, like to pursue my intellectual curiosity in. And I think like I also, from taking MIT classes, I kind of helped me to find my thesis direction, and like or kind of led me to the current thesis project, and also doing UROP with a couple of labs. The labs there also helps, and I think that like Wellesley CS like curriculum, I think it's like changing throughout the years, especially in the last maybe 1 or 2 years. But like I think a lot of the classes at Wellesley are like not so like project based, although like maybe some upper level electives they might have like very practical projects, but like a lot of the Wellesley classes are pretty theory happy, where you will have like a pretty good foundation of the theory, but like you don't get that much like technically challenging projects or problem sets to work on. So I think that at MIT it definitely will challenge a lot on your like problem solving abilities, and will definitely expose you to a very wide range of possibilities that like Wellesley usually doesn't do. And so I think that in that way it's really, really rewarding and like stimulating to take like MIT classes. And I'm sure that Olin would also have a lot of very interesting opportunities. And also like in the Europe's at MIT's also are pretty different from like doing research at Wellesley, because I have done both. And I think that they have a stronger, I think, lab, so-called like lab setting, at least in the couple that I have done. And like if you're interested in doing software engineering or like related roles, then maybe you can try like a UROP there. And because there are a lot of like very similar to software engineering opportunities, where you do get to like write code, write softwares, and then in a team or like collaborative setting. So like that might be really valuable for you to like learn as you like pursue like other professional opportunities.
Yeah. One thing that I think is really valuable about the Olin classes is that they're not quite as structured as Wellesley classes are. Like there's a lot of room to kind of pursue aspects of the overall course topic that you're interested in, and the professor will kind of just support you along the way. And so the first Olin class I cross-registered for was Neurotechnology, and that really helped me kind of solidify what part of neuroengineering I was interested in, and kind of just learn more about that field in a way that I don't think I would have really taken the initiative to do just at Wellesley. Yeah, another fun thing about Olin is that when you're cross-registered, you get to do trainings. So you can do things like learn how to weld and just kind of like practical engineering skills that are super, super cool and we don't quite have the support for here at the WE Lab.
Yeah, those sound awesome. Our next question is, who are or what has been very helpful for you when you have questions to decide which institution to cross-register at or which classes to take or like just any other general logistics?
For me, well, this isn't really the question as it was asked, but like for figuring out logistic stuff with MIT, it's been really, really good to know Alex in the UROP office really well. And I don't know, he's just like been so amazing for me and like getting forms in like when it's a tiny bit past the deadline and stuff. Because I used to spend a lot of time in the UROP office before COVID, when Alex and his team were there, and Alex had a dog. And I really like dogs, so I said hi to the dog quite a lot. And then I just got to know him. So yeah, knowing people within like MIT's bureaucracy and like administration can be really, really helpful in just like making the process easier for you. And then in terms of like asking for advice about courses, I talk to my advisors a lot. So I've like, for me, it's always been a question of like, should I take the intro grad microtheory at MIT or not? And like every semester, it's like, should I do it? Should I not? Because it has a lot of implications for grad school for me. So it's always been really helpful to talk to professors in the econ department about that because they have a lot of experience with Wellesley students cross-registering and doing that, and then like seeing how like grad school turned out for them and how they enjoyed the class. And then also like the internet can also be very helpful, especially with like larger CS classes. The MIT subreddit, a lot of people talk about like how hard a course is, what you need to know for the course, etc. So it was really useful in deciding to take intro to machine learning for me to like go there and see that like people were like, oh, like, you know, even though linear algebra isn't required as a prereq, you probably should have it. And that's like not something you would really know just from looking at the course listing. Yeah, so that's what I have to say.
Yeah, I think these are really great advice. I feel like my advisors are pretty new at Wellesley when like I got assigned to them. So I actually didn't utilize my advisor resource that much. And also probably because the classes I've taken at MIT are also relatively newer offerings, except for a couple of very popular ones. And so like I think that definitely like reaching out to the professors who are actually teaching the class at MIT is really helpful for me because like they will help you to decide whether you have the right background for the class. And I think that it might feel really intimidating to reach out to an MIT professor, especially the professor who was teaching like a 200 or maybe 300 people CS class. Like you really don't get to see professors that often. That is a really shocking thing when I first started taking MIT classes. But like they're actually really nice, and I think most of the professors I've interacted with has been really responsive to my emails, and they are usually very open for Wellesley students to cross-register, and sometimes they're like even accommodating to like introduce materials that like we need to learn beforehand to catch up the background and such. So I think that definitely feel free to do that. And I think that also just by asking around for advice or syllabus or like resources in a Facebook group or CS community is really helpful for me to kind of get a sense of like, oh, how do other Wellesley students feel about taking the class? Because I feel like Wellesley students have a relatively different backgrounds because we are like a liberal arts school. So maybe it's the best to reference other Wellesley students who are doing this other than MIT students' feedback because they might have a different background. Yeah, so I think these are some of the resources. And then sometimes it's also trial and error. like you might like be bold and jump into a class and then realize that you actually didn't like it that much. But I think that regardless of whether you like the class like to the extent that you thought you would like, it will still be valuable experiences because you're gaining things along the way. So yeah.
At Olin, they're definitely a very like tight-knit school. And so from the outside, their curriculum can look kind of confusing. They've got some weird names for courses that aren't really clear. But I would definitely recommend reaching out to a professor, or if you have Olin friends, like pretty much anyone on campus will be able to tell you something about a course that you're interested in. And they're really open to having conversations about kind of things that you might have learned in the past and things that you want to learn and how that would fit in with different courses in different areas of engineering within the Olin context. Yeah, and I think I said this earlier, but Dean Black does know a lot about Olin, although she hasn't been there for, I think, 5 or 6 years now. So really reaching out to the faculty. They're super friendly, always happy to talk to Wellesley students. So yeah.
Yeah, those are really helpful resources and advices. So panelists, do you have any final words of advice for first years or any other of our classmates here on Zoom who are new to cross registration process?
I would just like encourage you to explore and like, I don't know, I feel like cross registering can feel like a leap that's just like a tiny bit too big when like you're doing it for the first time. But I think it's really valuable, and everyone who I know have like benefited in some way from doing that. And then I just saw the question in the chat, are you able to take major courses at MIT? Yes, but various departments are like less or more stringent about like which classes will count for the major or not. So you have to talk to a designated person in the department about like if the class will count for the major. And even if it doesn't count, if you think it'll be valuable to like your understanding of a topic that you're really interested in, you can still take it. It just won't be like one of your major credits. You'll still get like credit for it. So I wouldn't like take that and then just say, oh no, like I shouldn't take this class because it's not going to count towards my major. I know a lot of people within the econ department take classes at Sloan if they want to go into finance. So I've never really been a finance person, so that hasn't really been a thing for me. But I know the econ department here doesn't really accept those classes as part of the major, but people still do it because it's beneficial to their career.
Yeah, I would definitely second that. I think I would also really encourage you to try out MIT classes. But I think like another thing that's kind of specific to CS is like I think that for people who are like starting CS at Wellesley, like maybe you started with CS 111 and like 130 at college without like a lot of prior backgrounds, then I think that maybe it's better to like take a couple of classes like intro foundational classes at Wellesley before you move on to MIT classes, because they do have a much faster pace and a much like greater technical depths. And I think that if you just started CS at Wellesley and you only taken like 111 or so, it will be really, really challenging for you. So you might feel really overwhelmed or even discouraged from the subject. But I think that it shouldn't be like that. I feel like MIT classes are there to like help to enhance your understanding and help you to discover those opportunities. So I would just encourage people who haven't done like that much CS to maybe like hold off a little bit. Just like maybe for like 1 year or so, like you can, if you start in your first year, then maybe you can start doing that, registering for more challenging MIT class in your sophomore year. And if you're interested in other departments at MIT, you can think about like other options outside of like the strictly CS. departments because I find that is pretty helpful for me. Like I also started CS at Wellesley and like took those intro sequences. And like the first class I've taken at MIT in the CS department is during my sophomore year. And I don't think like that's like any sort of late or anything. So like try to like definitely encourage you to do that, but also like adjust the classes or the specific classes that are taking according to your backgrounds and to see like what works best for you. So yeah.
Yeah, I would definitely say that your first class anywhere at MIT or Olin doesn't need to be like the most technical course ever. Like I would really recommend starting with like something that sounds fun and interesting to you and kind of seeing if the way, especially at Olin, the way that their learning works kind of fits with what you're looking for before you jump into something that's going to be like really, really mathy or really physicsy, just to kind of get a feel for the community and kind of get a sense of how courses are going to go. Yeah, but it's definitely a really fun process, even with the higher level courses. And yeah, I would really recommend it.
Yeah, so now that we asked all the questions to our panelists, are there any additional questions from the audience? I know under the chat, someone asked, are you able to take your major courses at MIT? Would anyone like to answer that?
I think that Zara has already covered that question. So let me think if I have any additional thing to add. Oh, so I think that the logistical thing definitely needs to be taken into account because like now I'm a senior and like I think a few weeks ago we had to confirm our majors. And then I realized that like I've taken a lot of very popular MIT classes like algorithms or machine learning or AI, and they are like already approved like classes for the major. But like although they are approved for a major, you still need to go through the process of the transfer credit approval. And if you don't do that, then like they will actually not count it as your major. So if like a class is really important for you to like graduate or have your major degree, then like you have to go through that process because I did have like spend a lot of time like a few weeks ago dealing with like administrative issues. So I would suggest like dealing with it right away, maybe if you can. And it makes it really easier for you.
And in the chat, so someone asked how important are recitations. It depends on the class. For Intro to Machine Learning, when I took it, it was required and it was kind of like a lab session. And I was just looking at like the intro CS class that they offer that's not machine learning. And in that class, it's just like review and it's not required. So I think like you have to look at the class. But then again, like a lot of the review and office hours, like components of CS classes at MIT are really important for like you to do well in the class. At least like for me, I was going to office hours and like intro ML every week, like every single time was offered, because it's just like the P sets are hard, and it's kind of expected that you spend like a lot of extra time interacting with the course staff. And any major culture shocks? Not really. I mean, the people were normal in my experience, and they're like, just fine people. They like what they do, and they're happy about it. And how do you get involved in UROPs? I would say I would like look at people who I would go on MIT's website, I would go to the departments that you're kind of interested in, and I would try and find professors that are doing stuff that's kind of sounds interesting to you. And you can pretty much cold email them if you haven't taken a class with them, and say, hey, my name is like whatever, I'm class of whatever, I'm majoring in this, and this is my background. I was wondering if you had any UROP positions available for the like upcoming semester, and then they'll either email you back or they won't. And like that's pretty much how a lot of people I know have gotten UROPs. And that's how I've gotten a couple of UROPs. Yeah, but I started doing UROPs the spring of my first year, so it's definitely possible to do it like as a first year. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that these are really good points. I think about like recitations or like scheduling conflicts, I think like that's a good question because I sometimes will have similar issues coming up in my schedule because it's just very hard to fit in an MIT class with like 4 Wellesley classes or 3. So I think that sometimes for the big CS classes that are like very popular, they might have recordings for lectures. So like I think a lot of people actually don't go to lectures. So like a lot of the times I actually realize that the recitations count more than the lectures because you're actually doing a lot of practices and like exercises that are useful for midterms and like final exam. So like a lot of people only go to recitations. So that's like actually the flipped scenario. And so maybe if you have like scheduling conflicts, then you can see like whether you can make it to at least one recitation, if that's like possible. And I know like they have a lot of like online resources as well for like CS. So like that's like a pretty good resource as well. And let's see, do you have to have taken a course of MIT for getting involved in Europe? I think no, you don't. Yeah, I think Sarah already answered. But I think that like there's like one thing though, because I noticed that they kind of changed the setup for the Europe advertisement website where you have to have the MIT account to get in and see the postings. So if you haven't taken any courses, and I mean that you're not like cross-registered there and you don't have an account, so you are not able to see the postings. But I think that you can still get around that by doing some cold emailings like Sarah mentioned. But I think that might be like a pretty tricky thing.
Yeah, so if there aren't any more questions, that would be it for today's event. If anyone wants to follow up with any of our panelists with additional questions, the panelists have offered to share their contact info, so it would be great if you guys could put your emails and drop them in the chat for people to get access to reach out. But that'll be it for today. Thank you so much for coming, and I hope we will see you in future GSC events. Thank you.